Hello and welcome back. In this original Black Excellist presentation, we will highlight Gordon Parks, the photojournalist and movie director.
Welcome to blackexcellist.com, the site where we share Black excellence, opulence, and affluence. Our mission is to inspire you as we enlighten you.
Gordon Parks, one of the greatest photographers of the 20th century, was a humanitarian with a deep commitment to social justice. He left behind an exceptional body of work that documents African American life and culture from the early 1940s into the 2000s, with a focus on race relations, poverty, civil rights, and urban life. Parks was also a distinguished composer, author, and filmmaker who interacted with many of the leading people of his era, from politicians and artists to athletes and other celebrities. In this original Black Excellist presentation, we will highlight Gordon Parks, the pioneering photographer, movie producer, and author. So without further ado, let's get started. Gordon Roger Alexander Buchanan Parks was born in Fort Scott, Kansas on November 30th, 1912. Born into poverty and the youngest of 15 children, Parks was raised by a devoutly Christian mother and a hardworking and moral father. The Parks family was part of the Black poor populace in Fort Scott, at that time a very segregated city. But the values instilled by his parents allowed Parks to dream of a brighter future. Parks left Kansas for Minnesota after his mother's death when he was just 15. After leaving Kansas, Parks moved to St. Paul, Minnesota to live with a sister. However, after a family dispute, he was out on the street, where he was homeless for a time. After a series of menial jobs, Parks was drawn to photography as a young man when he saw images of migrant workers in a magazine. After buying a camera at a pawn shop at the age of 25, he taught himself how to use it and eventually moved to Chicago in 1940, where he developed a portrait business. His self-training and passion for the camera led to a position with the photography section of the Farm Security Administration, FSA, in Washington, D.C., and later the Office of War Information, OWI. Working for these agencies, which were then chronicling the nation's social conditions, Parks quickly developed a personal style that would make him among the most celebrated photographers of his era. His extraordinary pictures allowed him to break the color line in professional photography, while he created remarkably expressive images that consistently explored the social and economic impact of poverty, racism, and other forms of discrimination. In 1944, Parks left the OWI to work for the Standard Oil Company's photo documentary project. Around this time, he was also a freelance photographer for Glamour and Ebony, which expanded his photographic practice and further developed his distinct style. His 1948 photo essay on the life of a Harlem gang leader won him widespread acclaim and a position as the first African-American staff photographer and writer for Life magazine. Parks would remain at the magazine for 2 decades until 1972. Covering subjects related to racism and poverty, but also fashion and entertainment. Parks would also take memorable pictures of such figures as Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., and Stokely Carmichael. His most famous images, for instance, American Gothic 1942 and Emerging Man 1952, capture the essence of his activism and humanitarianism and have become iconic, defining their generation. Parks was influential in the civil rights movement, not as a speaker or organizer, but through the influence his work had on others. He notably captured iconic images of the civil rights movement, investigating important turning points in inner cities. Parks did a series of photos for Life that brought the plight of the Black poor in the segregated South home to Northern whites. Parks was also a modern-day Renaissance man whose creative practice extended beyond photography to encompass fiction and nonfiction writing, musical composition, filmmaking, and painting. He authored A Choice of Weapons in 1966 that chronicled his journey as a photographer. And in 1969, he became the first African American to write and direct a major Hollywood studio feature film, The Learning Tree, based on his best-selling semi-autobiographical novel. His next film, Shaft, was a critical and box office success, becoming one of the most successful movies of 1971. Parks would go on to publish many more books, including memoirs, novels, poetry, and volumes on photographic technique. In 1989, he produced, directed, and composed the music for a ballet, Martin, dedicated to the late civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. Parks was married and divorced 3 times and was romantically linked to a number of other women, including Gloria Vanderbilt. He had 4 children, including Gordon Jr., who followed in his father's footsteps by becoming a photographer and movie maker. Parks spent much of the last 3 decades of his life evolving his style. Gordon Parks died in New York on March 7, 2006, as a result of cancer. He was 93 years old. Gordon Parks was recognized with more than 50 honorary doctorates, and among his numerous awards was the National Medal of Arts, which he received in 1988. Other awards include the American Society of Magazine Photographers Photographer of the Year in 1960, the Congress of Racial Equality Lifetime Achievement Award in 2000. Archives of his work reside at a number of institutions, including the Gordon Parks Foundation in New York, the Gordon Parks Museum in his hometown of Fort Scott, Kansas, the Library of Congress, the National Archives, and the Smithsonian Institution, all in Washington, D.C. Parks' work is in the permanent collections of major museums, including Chicago, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Detroit, Houston, St. Louis, and Richmond.
We appreciate the fact that you stayed with us until the end. Thank you for spending time with us, and don't forget to like this video. Also, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss a video. Bye for now. We will see you tomorrow.